1 2 2 2. Jaime and Miguel aren't coming. Oh, okay, good. For Joyce. Ooh, 11:40. We are starting late. Good morning and welcome to the board briefing, a meeting of the Dallas Independent School District Board of Trustees. Please stand and join us for a moment of silence and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and a salute to the Texas flag. Thank you. Trustees present, starting on your left and my right, are Trustee Lou Blackburn, Trustee Joyce Foreman, Trustee Dan Mitchke. On your right, Trustee Justin Henry and Trustee Dustin Marshall. I am Edwin Flores, and we are joined by the Superintendent of the Schools, Dr. Michael Hinojosa. I guess I have to do the honors. Si hay alguien que necesita los servicios de un intérprete, aquí la señorita en la parte de atrás del cuarto les puede ayudar con el equipo. Gracias. At this time, trustees, I would like to recognize any elected or public officials that are in the audience. Okay. So we will now turn to the next item on the agenda is the public forum segment. We have no speakers for today's meeting. And Dr. Hinojosa, the next item is closed session. Do we have a closed session today? We do not have a closed session. So we will move on to Vision Progress Monitoring, Section 5, Student Outcome Goal 2. All right, Dr. Durant.
And good afternoon. This afternoon we have all good news for you. I know that as you've read the report, you saw that every single one, we were hitting every single one of our points. So if we go on to the next slide, we'll see that really we're showing progress in all grades. Harley absolutely continues to hit a home run. And we also, very importantly, that last one is a critical one. We see improvement in class with our experienced teachers. So that's something that we want to see if it's a practice that we want to replicate with our other grade levels.
So good morning, trustees. This slide starts to show you the data. This report is about end-of-year results from last year, looking across sort of pre-K to second grade space. And as Dr. Durant just mentioned, what we see in 2017-18 across the board is more growth within the year than we saw the year prior. So from the beginning of year, when a student started kindergarten, for example, to the end of the year when they finished, their growth exceeded what we saw in the prior year. And we see that for every grade level, and this is using the iStation reading data. We also see the same thing when we look specifically at the two progress measures the board has set for kindergarten and second grade, looking at African American and Hispanic students. The growth in 2017-18 was better than in the prior year. We also see that in absolute performance, African American kindergarten students this most recent school year had an upward trajectory overall in absolute terms. Then when we look at the data as we typically do, comparing students who came through our pre-K program to those who didn't, this is looking at two different assessments in kindergarten and then second grade Terra Nova, we continue to see that our pre-K students are outperforming their eligible but non-pre-K peers. One of the other things that we can see in this slide when we look at the kinder data is the difference in results when we look at iStation versus Terra Nova. These are the same students taking these assessments within about 3 weeks of each other, but the assessments are telling us something quite a bit different. And that's a conversation that we've had with you in looking at what's going on right now this month in the district, which is a different way to measure kindergarten readiness with the Texas Kindergarten Entry Assessment. And then something definitely worth celebrating, and I had the good pleasure to be at this school just a little bit ago this morning, but Harley, without question, continues to rise head and shoulders above the rest of the district. You see this for kinder and first grade. This school year is their first year to have second grade students, so we'll be able to start reporting other data to you soon. But Harley outperforms the district overall. When we look at African American students, I want to draw your attention to that Kinder Terra Nova result. African American students in kinder last year at Harley were at 97% on grade level. First grade African American students at Harley last year were at 90% on grade level. That's 30 percentage points higher than African American first graders in the district overall. So we're definitely continuing to see amazing results from what that school is doing and need to continue to learn from it as we look to other schools across the district. To the final point on class, which is a huge part of how Harley approaches their work and thinking about what they do, and to circle back to a conversation we had last fall on this notion of teachers who had at least been in that same grade level for the year prior, or teachers who are new to the grade, we see that there is a difference when we look at class data. This comes from our spring assessments that were just completed a few months ago. And for all 3 grade levels, we see a clear quality difference in teachers who have more time to practice that craft in that specific grade versus those that are new. And this is just a carry on to data that you've seen before. That on the left is looking at K2 data. What's on the right is a different data set, and that's looking all the way back to when we started to use class in the fall of 2015 within pre-K. We are now entering our 4th year of using class as a quality indicator for our district, and we wanted to share that over those past 3 years, 7 out of the 10 specific things that we measure in class are statistically significantly higher and improved over that time period. One of them, positive climate, is essentially the same, which has always been a very high score for us. And then the other 2, concept development and quality of feedback, have improved, just not quite enough to be statistically significant. But this shows over time, with the continued focus that we have and with the support provided through the early learning coaches, that we are seeing quality gains within our classrooms. And then just quickly to wrap this up, this year has a lot of really great things going on from a curriculum standpoint, and that's K-12 with our new literacy and social studies curriculum, which we got to spend time this week working on with teachers and campus leaders. As I mentioned a minute ago, this month we are launching the Texas Kindergarten Entry Assessment, and we'll have that data to share with you later this fall. And our coaching support is being targeted to the schools who need it the most according to our school performance framework. So we want to continue to see that class data improve, student level data improve, and ensure that our coaches are where they need it the most. I know later you're actually going to get an enrollment update, but this year we're going to continue to build on what we've done in the past to recruit more students into the district, but also to ensure that they are staying with Dallas ISD, because clearly our results are showing that families should definitely consider what we're doing here. So with that, we'll take questions.
Trustees, any questions? Trustee Foreman?
Yes.
Trustee Marshall next.
Derek, just a few questions. And I'm on slide 4, where we talked about the kinder ISIP. So, and looking at the African American numbers. So is it a total of 2,253 that you assessed?
In the beginning of the year, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so what's the other number?
The 1,983, those were the number of students who were assessed at the end of the year. So a slight difference in participation.
So why is the difference? Did we lose these students, or what's the difference?
It's a mix, and you see this across the board, regardless of which grade level or which demographic we look at. There's generally some attrition over the course of the year when we look at the number of students participating in the assessment, and that's due to a lot of things. It could be due to students leaving the district. I would think that's a small population. It could be due a little bit to other things happening in that grade level and at that point in time. So making sure that other required, like the Terra Nova assessment, is getting done and they're not competing. And there could be a variety of other things, but this is not uncommon for us to see.
So the reason I asked that question, I think the last time I looked at data, we were losing kids in kinder. Is that correct?
We have historically had not the results that we want in terms of retaining our pre-K students into kindergarten.
We're losing kids in kinder.
It's hard to answer the question that way, Trustee Foreman. Our retention rate from pre-K to K has been consistent. Our numbers this year, which we'll potentially get into the update later, but kindergarten enrollment this year surpassed projections for kindergarten students.
I'm not looking at enrollment, I'm looking at the retention. And the last time I looked at data, we were losing kids in kinder, and I'm not saying that as a negative, that's a fact. And so the question I have is then when I go to page 5, and then there's a difference between the Terra Nova and the ISIP data. Can you help me kind of understand why we're lower on the ISIP data than the Terra Nova?
In the overall results, the 57 versus the 81, we think that is almost entirely due to the nature of the assessment themselves. Both of these are norm-referenced assessments.
Correct.
But the Terra Nova data and the Supera, the Spanish version of the data, generally looks much closer to what you see here, which also looks much closer to what we see in our own district ACP assessments. The nature of iStation and the way that it sort of categorizes students into Tier 1, 2, and 3 generally puts, I guess the only way to say it is there's sort of an artificial ceiling at the 60% mark. So the test would only assume that 60% of students in a population would be Tier 1. And that's what we're reporting here is the number of students, or the percent of students Tier 1.
So the data that I'm looking at on page 5, is that African American? Is that overall students in the district? Because of what you just said regarding the Hispanics.
Yeah, these are overall students based on whether or not they attended Dallas ISD pre-K. So all demographic groups are represented here.
Okay, but the assessment is different in English and in Spanish?
Yes, so the Terra Nova represents students who tested in English. The Supera results, which I think I may have in the appendix, represent students who tested in Spanish.
Okay, do you have those results?
Let's see.
On the page
Yes,
10.
ma'am.
Page what?
10.
10.
All right, so that's another page. Okay, I don't have a 10 in the book here. Oh, there it is, okay. All right, I'll look at that. And then, Derek, on page 8. So I'm assuming, and you, Yvonne can probably answer this. Number 1, you talk about supporting a new K-12 literacy and social studies curriculum. Is that
Correct.
currently in place?
It's currently in place, and we had our very first SILT meeting after the kickoff this summer. We had over 900 people at our SILT training, and we were working directly with the curriculum. Teachers brought their laptops, and they were giving us feedback. We have a comprehensive report, feedback from the teachers that I'd like to share with you in one of the board updates.
Okay. And then on number 2, implementing a new Kinder-Ready assessment this month. Is this something that's been designed by a TEA or the state of Texas?
It is designed by the Children's Learning Institute. So the Children's Learning Institute out of the University of Houston created the assessment. It was probably, Trustee Foreman, 15 to 18 months ago that we talked about the commissioner releasing a new list of approved kindergarten ready assessments, and this is one of those on the list. It also happens to be free, which is nice, but more importantly than that is it's going to measure multiple domains of learning, and it is teacher to student sort of individualized administration, so we think this has huge potential for shaping instruction in the classroom.
So how long has this been in existence?
This is the first year that we are using it at full scale. We piloted it in our district last year. It has been available for 4 years, perhaps. I can get that accurate number for
Do we
you.
have any data that shows that the assessments are working in any other school district?
We have lots of data to show that the assessment is accurate and valid and all of the psychometrics are legitimate. The other thing that we can do is this is created by the same organization that created our pre-K assessment. So Circle, what we administer in pre-K, is made by the same folks and is administered in largely the same way.
So the only reason I ask that, often we buy into programs and we have no idea if they work or not. And so if you could share those assessments with me and other board members that might want to know what's going on, that's fine. And then you talked a little bit about the coaches that we have in early learning. I believe that's from pre-K 3 all the way up to second grade. Is that correct?
That is correct, with one caveat. So all of our pre-K classrooms receive coaching support. Not all kinder to second grade classrooms receive coaching support, and the way those are allocated to campuses is based on their school performance rating.
So that's from kinder to
Second grade, yes, ma'am.
based on school performance rating.
Yep.
Okay. And then the last one is intensifying recruitment and retention efforts. And I would assume that you're talking about teachers.
No,
Or are
this
you
is
talking about
this is students.
Talking about students. So how do we plan on doing that?
We've been ramping up our marketing approach in partnership with our communications team a lot over the past few years. This most recent school year, for the first time, we really had a dedicated focus on kindergarten, so capturing more students into kindergarten. In April, the culmination of that was a district-wide kinder camp, which was sort of in partnership with campuses and families. So we want to build on that so that there are touch points going out almost on a monthly basis throughout the year, letting families know that, you know, pre-K isn't the only thing they should experience in Dallas ISD. They need to stay. But this also won't stop at kindergarten, like continuing to reiterate the strong results that we're seeing at third grade and beyond.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Marshall?
I'll be brief. I just want to offer my congratulations and gratitude for these continually impressive results. I feel like we have the same conversation every time you come to present in front of us, but without fail, these results continue to astound me, and I'm very grateful for the work that you're doing, particularly around improving quality metrics. And I think you have a slide in there. I don't have the number. Unfortunately, I can't get my computer to come on, but it's the one with Harley results for, yeah, the 97, the 80 to 97% difference, 17 percentage point gain with African American, and the 30% difference on Terra Nova is remarkable. I mean, that alone, from my perspective, we talk about closing the achievement or the opportunity gap as a core, objective of this board and this organization, and nothing that we've seen with any other program that we have in this district is coming anywhere close to that result. And so, Derek, I've asked you this question several times. I know I asked it when you took me on a tour of Harley a couple months ago, but what is the secret sauce of Harley, and how do we replicate it? And like I said, I've asked you this before, but when you answer it this time, I would appreciate it if you would give particular emphasis to what this board can do to either fund or support or scale whatever the secret sauce is at Harley, because this is how we close the gap, and this board needs to help you, and I'd like to understand how.
I think similar to what we've shared in the past, I mean, the first thing on the list is absolutely the leadership at the campus, the principal and her administrative team, who've now, from 4 years ago when the school's open to today, been consistent. So there's absolutely consistent and very committed and strong leadership at the campus level. The other thing that in terms of consistency really matters is at the teacher level. Their teachers came to that school and they have stayed at that school and they have kept them within the same grade level for the most part, and we're seeing some of that pay off. A third thing that I would add is simply sort of the way that they approach their instruction. So they live and breathe this notion of what class embodies every day. And I've made this point before, and I don't think it's one that we need to replicate in every other campus, but I think the culture it embodies is important. So their custodian, their nurse, their counselor, like all of those folks have been trained in that. And the reason the principal gives is so that we all have the same shared language and thought process behind what's going on at the campus. So I think that mindset or that paradigm around this matters. The fourth thing I would add, which I think is something we're all trying to work on, but their student enrollment is very consistent. So we do not see the same mobility we see at other campuses in the district at Harlee. They come at pre-K 3 and they largely stay. Next year will be interesting because they're going to have to go somewhere else for third grade for that first class. But it'll also be interesting because we get to track what that cohort looks like in third grade reading to really see long-term impacts. The fifth thing I would say, which again is something that's probably a little more intangible, but the community support, and Trustee Blackburn is well aware of this, at that school has also been really significant. Very much respected community leaders have continued to advocate for that school, continued to secure resources for that school, and continue to demand these types of results from that school, and all that's really important. The other thing which you always hear us say as well, which is probably impossible to replicate, but this school is pre-K 2. And so that ability to have laser-like focus at the principal and the teacher level without any other tension certainly matters.
I will add to that response there is that the principal there is not tempted to move the great teachers to third grade star or fourth grade star because there is no star at that campus. And so the great teachers have been worked together and they stay together and they build upon each other, and they don't have the high stakes pressure of a state assessment, although we are measuring their performance very clearly here. And that's another thing that other campuses don't, which we've talked about before, is keeping the people trained in early literacy at early literacy so they can help us. Sometimes we get into short-term gratification instead of long-term game, and that's when we make bad decisions. And here they're not tempted with that opportunity to make a bad decision.
So again, let me ask you the question of what this board needs to do to help those five. You just mentioned five, you mentioned the six success factors in this school. So what do we need to go do? Do we need to cut every elementary school in half at second grade and make them all pre-K through second? Do we need, I mean, what do we need to do?
It's a little bit awkward for me to be in the position to tell the board what to do, Trustee Marshall. You're also the guy that wanted to choke my neck at one point, so we'll have to balance this. Yes. No, we're not going to go create pre-K 2 and 3-5 schools. I think what we have to stay focused on is the approach to thinking in early learning to ensure that decision making at the central level, how we allocate coaches and resources to the campus level of how teachers are allocated and supported are to that long-term view. And that's a mindset shift that we all have to struggle with. And I think the more that we hear that from you, the easier it is to grapple with that. But from an early learning context, I mean, this board has shown its support and importance of pre-K quality. It's shown its support and importance of supporting K2 classrooms through our coaches. I think we have to continue those things.
I guess I'll let you off the hook there. You can send me a list on
I don't know about that either.
I would honestly like a tactical list of things that the board can do to further invest in these results because, we've been watching Harlee now for a while, and in my simplistic head, I thought of Harlee as a pilot test. And as far as I'm concerned, the pilot test is over. We know this is working. We know how to be successful, and now it's a question of how we scale it across the district. And so it's great to see slides on Harlee every time, but I want this not to say Harlee at the top. I want it to say all.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so
Mm-hmm.
you need to tell us what you need to accomplish that. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
trustees, trustee Blackburn, trustee Mitchell, trustee Pinkerton.
Yeah.
So we'll go Lou, Dan, Audrey.
Okay. I'll chime in a little bit about Harley. When we started, it pretty much was as a pilot to see what would it be like to have the non-pressure from STAR and all these other things, but to focus